If you're in Seattle, and you need to buy or sell a home, we'll be right there for you. Because we're the realtors that you can trust. So go to ronanddonsitdown.com.
You're listening to The Ron and Don Show on the Ron and Don Radio Network.
Hey, you guys, what's going on? Welcome to episode 863 now of The Ron and Don Show, and we are back live in the Les Schwab studios.
What is up, Ron and Don Nation?
Hey, don't forget, if you're listening to us on podcast, you can now watch the show to our horror.
Yeah, we are on the YouTube. So you
Yeah.
search for Ron and Don Radio. That's our channel. And as the kids say these days, smash that subscribe button and the little bell icon. So you'll be notified when a new episode comes out.
Hey, can you hear us? Is that a cement mixer going by?
A cement mixer is nearby. The Ron and Don Studios in a prime location.
We spared no
next
expense.
to a cement mixer station.
Anyway, coming up on the Ron and Don Show, we're going to talk about America's treasure hunt. Also, Warren Buffett. How does he stay so buff? Before we get to that, though, let's get to this. Bill Gates now saying, and this is kind of interesting to me, that he will give away $200 billion before he dies in the next 20 years. And also, this is new information. He says he's going to close the Bill, and now it's just the Gates Foundation because Melinda has walked away. What say you? Because he's had hundreds of people sign letters, including Warren Buffett, who we're going to talk about in a moment. Hundreds of people sign letters that say, hey, like I think the woman that started Spanx is worth over $1 billion. She signed a letter saying, please give away.
I think Larry Ellison might have signed some. Like a lot of billionaires have joined the
Yeah. So in order to give that money away, and we found out when Oprah's trying to give away money, and we know what happened with that school, and there were some issues where kids were being abused. It is, I know. I said a very bad Oprah. Even in when we have contacted the Gates Foundation before. In fact, we contacted him, and I won't go into that story right now. But to do something, well, I will. It was with a terminal child. They wanted to meet Bill Gates before it was kind of a Make-A-Wish thing, and no one could get to Bill and Melinda Gates. So we got a semi. Remember this?
Yep.
And we parked it over at the Microsoft campus. And we put a big sign on the side of it that said, hey, Bill, give Ron and Don a call.
Well, we had to get some intel on which building he would be in.
We found the building. We parked the rig. And then we thought, because it's impossible to get a hold of him, but we wanted to do it for this young boy that was dying. They got in touch with us. He actually had one of his assistants call us and say, Bill is willing to meet. You just can't talk about it on the radio.
And he gave him an Xbox.
Because, well, he didn't just do that. He flew him to Las Vegas. At the time, there was some kind of game expo that was going on. And then Bill, for hours, played video games with him, right? And then this boy ended up passing. He wanted to do this memory, but he didn't want it talked about. And we know this and work with a lot of athletes. They don't want it talked about because then there's this expectation that they'll do it for everyone because people can be real jackwagons about that. And then when you don't do it, everybody talks about what you didn't do when you didn't sign the autograph or you didn't make the phone call or you didn't do the video, and no one talks about the things that you end up doing.
Well, this is an important thing, though, with what Bill is doing.
Yeah.
So if you rewind a little bit to the foundation, to the beginning of the Gates Foundation, their stated goal was to get the low-hanging fruit worldwide. And if you listen to Bill Gates talk about this, he would say, for instance, you might have 10 million children die of malaria in a given calendar year. He's like, that is easy to solve. We know how to solve that right now.
Mosquito nets, right?
There was another thing of many children in the third world would die from diarrhea every year. He's like, that's easy to solve. Like, we have the rotavirus right now. It's relatively inexpensive to get a dose of that. He's like, we can solve that right now. So Bill Gates went out, and I think the genius of the Gates Foundation, and a lot of people at the time were critical, and they say, we got problems right here. Why don't you solve the stuff right? He's like, no, I want to save lives en masse around the world. And so there's some stuff that we can do right away. So if you look at the statistics of these, especially for children, deaths among children have dropped by millions with the efforts of the Gates Foundation. So the reason he's accelerated his giving plan, it was always to say within 20 years of his death, they would spend all the money. He's accelerated that because programs that he helped create with the George Bush presidencies to help these kids around the world, that money's gone away with the Doge Bros. And so Bill Gates has stepped in and said, we're literally, I don't know if you saw the quote, it was pretty incredible. I think he was talking to Stephen Colbert. He said, it's really ironic that the richest man in the world, Elon Musk, is killing the poorest children in the world. And he just came flat out and said that. He usually tries to stay really apolitical. And so he's like, because these programs have gone away, and the matching. So what Bill Gates would do is say, he'd go to the U.S. government and say, I've developed a program for this rotavirus. I've developed a program, I meaning the Gates Foundation. The Gates Foundation has developed this program to disseminate mosquito nets. Here's our projections. We're going to save 5 million kids over the next 20 years, and they will have productive lives. And so we need you to partner with us, U.S. government, with USAID and some of these other programs, to where we're going to maximize the dollars and save millions of children's lives. It's a net positive for America because as we go through these developing countries, they are going to know that the United States saved my child. That's good for diplomacy. It's just a net positive in the world. Being the world's richest economy, we're saving lots of lives. And that's what they did. And so year over year, he would track these low-hanging fruits and mosquitoes and sanitation and diarrhea, all of that stuff. And so when USAID was shut down and when the Doge Bros came in and cut all those programs, Gates now is sitting there going, we've got the plan. The funding just disappeared.
Yeah.
So he is going to accelerate giving the own money from the foundation to bridge that gap because he's like, I don't want to see, he's like, already deaths have started to rise. There are children right now in the world who would still be alive if those programs weren't cut. And so that bothers him to the extent where he's like, I guess I'm just accelerating the giving so that now the horizon used to be 40 years and now it's going to be 20 years because we now need to step in, continue to save those lives. He wants to get these deaths, preventable deaths, down to zero if possible. But like, for instance, malaria, he thinks he can get down to zero within 5 years. But what used to be paid for by the United States government is now gone away.
Let me ask you this. The plan was to never close the foundation. Why close the foundation? What do you think?
The plan was to close the foundation.
Is that right?
He wanted it to be spent within 20 years of his death. So now he's accelerated that by 20 years because of what I just said.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting they say if you're on the spectrum, then some people on the spectrum are challenged to feel empathy. I think we're all on the spectrum. I think we're all somewhere on the spectrum. I know that I certainly am, and I know sometimes I don't have empathy. There was a woman who I got up early this morning, and the reason I was 5 minutes late today is I'm driving my son to school, and she comes up to me, and I think she was Ukrainian, and she's just out of nowhere. She's like, hey, my car broke down. Could you help me? And I was just like, well, I have to drop my son off, and then I have to get home, and then I have to take a shower, and then I have to go meet Matt off the mic and Ron of the Ron and Don so we can record. And I'm just thinking, I don't have time for this. And I looked at her and I said, and I didn't feel like helping her. I just didn't because of all these things that were happening. And I was just like, I have to drive my son to school. Do you have any jumper cables? She said no. I said, see if you can find some, and then I'll help you when I get back. Did not want to help her, which is unusual because usually I want to help people. But I didn't want to be late for today's thing, and Matt has a meeting, and I want to make sure we did everything on time. So I get back there. It's raining out. She's still sitting in her car. I went over and I talked to her. And what had happened is she is a delivery driver, and she'd made a delivery to my next door neighbor. at 7 a.m. and had dropped off their breakfast and some other stuff. And then she went back out to her car. Her car wouldn't start. She didn't have anyone to call. She went back and knocked on their door, and they wouldn't answer the door, which that neighbor's kind of an ass. So I'm not surprised they didn't. They don't answer the door when I knock on the door either. But who knows? Maybe the neighbor's up taking a shower or whatever. We'll believe the best, even though I shouldn't. So I pulled in. And I went and got my jumper cables, and I helped jump her car. And in that moment, I was so grateful that I did that when I heard her story and was able to speak with her. She's a Ukrainian refugee, and she is here doing the jobs that none of us want to do, right? And her car broke down. So I was able to get her car going, and then she still had food in the car and she's like, I have to go deliver this. And I said, you can't. We have to get you down the hill to the store, and I'm going to send you to my friends, and we're going to go over to Les Schwab, and we're going to get you a new battery. We're in the Les Schwab studio. So that's what we did. I was glad that I took the moment to feel that empathy. I think it's really interesting, though, when I look at Elon Musk, how smart he is. I see him in one-on-one interviews sometimes where he says things that I really respect. And then you turn around, and it seems like there is something there that's lacking. It's called empathy, and people say, well, it's because he's on the spectrum. Bill Gates has come out and said, hey, man, I am on the spectrum. But he still seems to have a real sense of empathy. Do you think this comes from a place of empathy for him or a place of legacy, or maybe both?
Well, if you read Bill Gates' new book and you read the Walter Isaacson book on Elon Musk, which I've done, the difference there is the parents.
Is that right?
Bill Gates' parents, especially his mom, and he talks about it at great length in this book, did actively put him in situations where he could develop empathy his entire life. And so it's a very good book. You should, if you want to read, I think it's called Code Man or the Code.
Oh, really?
Something like that. And it's about his childhood.
Okay.
It's about Bill Gates growing up in Seattle, what his mom and dad were like, all the way to where he starts Microsoft, and then the book ends. Okay. And I was like, that's what I want to hear, that part. So maybe there's going to be a part 2.
Yeah.
But when you look at Elon's family, his father is a piece of work.
Yeah.
And you know, it's not surprising. But I think for Bill Gates, it's both in the sense of he likes the numbers, and he likes going, I can save a human life for X amount of dollars. I think that's what scratches the itch for him of going. He did not expect, and when you read this book, he did not expect to become the richest man in the world. He was trying to solve a problem with his friend. It started in high school, where they needed a new system to create everybody's schedules for the school. Was it
Paul Allen back then, or
it was Paul Allen? Yeah. And so it was solving the problems, loving the math, getting paid. He wanted to get paid.
Doing that in New Mexico, didn't have the money, and his dad Bill said, well, I'll fund it, but you have to come back to Seattle in order for me to fund it, is my understanding.
Not really true, but kind of. But so like
what do you mean not really true, but kind of?
His dad helped with the legal side.
He didn't fund it?
Not really.
I heard he didn't have money when he was down in New Mexico, and his dad said, hey, if you want money and you want me to fund it.
It's not in the book. His dad...
Source code.
Source code.
Source code.
His dad did...
Matt off the mic says source code.
His dad did find him an attorney in New Mexico that helped with an important contract that then made more money to license.
I like my story better.
Okay. Well, never let the truth interrupt a good story.
I believe that.
And so as long as you believe it passionately enough in today's America, it can be true for you.
Of course it can.
But so my point being is that I think that Bill Gates... he wasn't intending, the goal was never, I'm going to be the richest man in the world.
Yeah.
The goal was, let me solve this thing, let me create this
That was never your goal either, and you know what?
My goal came true.
It's happening.
That's right.
Yeah, it's happening right now. More in a minute.
Today's show is made possible by your friends Ron and Don. When you're ready to sit down and strategize about your real estate journey, schedule your time with the guys at ronanddonsitdown.com.
All right, you guys, welcome back to the Ron and Don Show. Some of my favorite pictures are of Bill Gates on a very nice plane sitting next to Warren Buffett. And Warren is usually there having some McDonald's, just like our current president. And they're usually playing, do they play bridge together?
They play contact bridge, and they do go to tournaments. So imagine
What is contact bridge? What does that mean?
I don't know the rule variations.
They hit
of
each
bridge.
other?
It's
You lose, you get smacked?
It's competition bridge, and you play for money. And so the way it works is there'll be a tournament, and it's usually at like the middle school library or the middle school gymnasium on a Saturday.
Oh, that's where Bill met the girl that he got in a little trouble with.
She's a competitive bridge player.
Okay.
And so you pay the entry fee would be something like $100, or in a big tournament maybe it's $500.
Yeah.
So if you can imagine, like if you and I were bridge partners, we're showing up in Omaha at the junior high school.
Love it.
We pay our entry fee and we come in. Here walks in two richest men in the world.
School man.
And they are playing bridge. They want to win the tournament.
Yeah.
And so in the
they're
book,
very competitive.
in the
about
book Source Code, you do learn about that Bill, his grandmother introduced him to games.
Yeah.
And she would not let him win.
Oh.
And it was like a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
She would crush his soul.
That's great.
Until so he knew when he beat his grandma.
You gotta learn
that
to lose.
it was legit.
My grandma was that way with the game of hearts. Like we played a lot of hearts. So you play card with your parents, right?
Yeah, we'll play some cards.
Little Go Fish, or what do you guys?
Gin rummies, they normally like to play.
Yeah.
So Warren Buffett, though, this is a very interesting story.
Yeah, well, he's retiring. What are your thoughts on him retiring, and how is that going to affect his company, and how will that affect the stock market? How will that affect all of us? And then I want to talk about his diet here real quick.
I think the death. So he, of course, was at the helm of Berkshire Hathaway, which he purchased many, many years ago, and his pal Charlie Munger was his cohort. And I believe it's some ridiculous thing. Like since his ownership, it's something like 5 million % increase in your stocks. So if you bought in when he first took over the company, it was a 5 million % increase.
And what he always says is, if you don't know what to do, just follow the S&P and invest in the S&P and just be very boring. I saw a video one time of him in his office, and evidently his wife gives him money. She puts it, because he drives his own car to work. They live in the same house. She puts money, he says, in kind of, I don't know if it's the ashtray or
the cup holder.
Yeah, the cup holder, and then he uses that money to go and buy his McDonald's every day.
Well, not only that, Warren Buffett, the apocryphal story is, if he had a good day in the market, he gets a McGriddle. But
as he should.
If he lost money the day before in the stock market, then he can only get like the McMuffin. He has a lower threshold of food.
Yeah.
So he famously buys companies, and so the companies he likes to buy, he's a huge stakeholder in like Coca-Cola. Mm-hmm. He drinks 6 Cokes a day, like not Diet Cokes, full strength Cokes. He loves See's Candy, was a famous person where he just bought the whole. He went into the mall. He had some See's Candy, liked the chocolate so much that he just bought See's Candy. Wow. He owns, he goes to McDonald's every day. I think he's a big stakeholder in McDonald's. And he famously does not work out. And he eats junk food every single day of his life with the 6-pack of Cokes. And he's like, look at me, I'm in my 90s.
Yeah.
But he's going to walk. I think Charlie Munger's death said, hey, I have a very short amount of time left on this earth. I don't know what his other passions are besides bridge, but he's just going to retire and go do his thing. I think he's got enough disciples there at the company that they will be fine, but he definitely was the most famous investor of all time.
Yeah. You know what I think is interesting about that? And growing up in the church, a lot of people that were pastors at that time in the church, I've seen them pass away over the last couple of years. A lot of those guys that don't, and even our current president, he could go for, even though he doesn't work out, he plays a little golf. He's been kind of a junk food guy. Some people think he's doing Ozempic right now, which is.
Did you see in Saudi Arabia, the king of Saudi Arabia brought in a mobile chicken McNugget trailer? Did you see this?
No.
Because when Donald Trump flew to Saudi Arabia, at the Palace. It's a mobile semi-McDonald McNugget mobile.
It's because when
he likes the McNuggets.
When they have like whoever the football team is
You
every
got the
year
finest food in the world.
that wins the national championship, he brings in like Big Macs and
But
quarter
the
pounders and
King
French
of Saudi
fries.
Arabia brings in a McNugget mobile.
That king knows what he's doing.
Oh my gosh.
He'll probably put a McNugget machine on the plane.
Okay, so let me ask you this.
No, the point being,
one question. So Trump, I don't know if Buffett believes this, but Trump subscribes to the battery theory of lifespan, meaning that when you're born, you have a certain battery level, and that as you age, that battery level goes down. So if you exercise, it's making your battery go down faster. And that everybody has a predetermined battery level.
Yeah.
And if you just need to, when your battery runs out, your battery runs out.
Wow.
And then Buffett believes, or his behavior is, if it's genetics. So for him, he can eat McDonald's and he can drink 6 Cokes a day, and his genetics are going to determine when he dies. And so,
which is part of it,
he
sure.
He doesn't need to exercise, doesn't need to watch it. He's going to eat. He said, the pleasure I derive from the foods that I like, that counterbalances the benefits. He's like, I would be miserable if I ate salads every day. So he goes, life is about a positive mental attitude and being pleasurable. He's like, the pleasure I get from these foods counterbalances the health effects of if I hated eating every day.
Yeah, I think what happens, and I don't think all that's wrong, and even the battery stuff, I don't think all that's wrong. But people start thinking about longevity, living longer, and then what will my life be like if I do live longer?
You don't think that the battery thing is wrong?
Do I think it's wrong?
That you have a battery level? This
is what I think that's more important. When I look at some of these pastors that have been in church since they were very young, and because of that, a lot of them are in very stable family environments. A lot of them, not all of them, but do very wholesome things. A lot of them have never smoked. They've never done a drug, and they don't drink. And if you look at Buffett, he doesn't drink, he doesn't smoke, he's never done a drug. Donald Trump is the same way. Those 3 things he's never done. He has told his kids, don't do those things, right? Do not do those things. The reason he doesn't do those things is because he had a brother that did those things and that died very young. So I think, I look at I'm heading towards.
Are you saying that pastors live longer?
A lot of the pastors I know, they die in their 90s. Yeah,
okay.
They die in their 90s. Like a friend of mine that was a pastor who died the other day, he was 94. So I think for men, like yesterday, Heart Attack Scott, who's one of our best friends, he's my architect, he had a heart attack in my spin class like 16 years ago. He calls the stent in his heart O'Neill. He was back at the hospital yesterday putting in O'Neill Jr. and the one that he calls Gunner because downstream he had to put in 2 more stents. So I think some of that, like what's happening with him, I think a lot of that has to do with your genetics when it comes to stenting the heart, but also it has to do with the fact that, and he's not a heavy drinker, but he loves a good steak, right? And but he does a pretty good job of walking around, taking care of himself. I think his genetics, if he did a lot of drinking, a lot of smoking, previous drug use and all, I don't think he'd be with us. Like my father, before the age of 60, had, I believe, 3 heart attacks. Lifelong smoker, drinker, truck driver. You're sitting in that truck all day. You're not moving around. I think when you extract those things, especially for men, when you don't drink, you don't smoke, you've never done those drugs, I think your ability to live longer or for your battery to last longer, I think that has a big effect. Because what's the number one thing that kills men our age? It's a heart attack. And it's the fact that, in fact, I remember I was at a dinner a few months ago with the gentleman that's the chief for the Seattle Fire Department. He said the best place that you could have a heart attack in the world is here in Seattle. And he said it's not so much because of our Medic 1 units that come out. He said people here are very educated. They're educated on CPR. And when you drop, it's really important that the people around you know what to do. And I've seen this happen in my gym a number of times. Like there's a defibrillator on the wall, and there's people there that know how to use it. And he said that is key to surviving a heart attack.
I think in defense of junk food, like I think there's a place for junk food. It is surprising to me that Buffett could do it every day and drink 6 Cokes a day. It's one of the things that
But if he was a drinker, he wouldn't be alive.
Right.
He would not be alive. There's no way. Eating that kind of food and drinking, his battery would have gone out a long time ago.
Yeah, so he's retiring and probably just going to stay in Omaha.
Yeah. Omaha.
Oh, why not Omaha?
Why not Omaha? More on the other side of this.
You're listening to The Ron and Don Show on the Ron and Don Radio Network.
All right, you guys, welcome back to the Ron and Don Show. If you're listening to us on a podcast, you can now watch the show, right?
Yeah, you can go to YouTube and search for Ron and Don Radio. Hit subscribe and the little bell thing. That will help us with the algorithm.
Yeah, hit subscribe, you guys, and thanks for listening to us on the pod. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media. I'm Don O'Neill. He's who are you again?
Exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, my favorite segment of the week is when we talk about what we're listening to, what we're watching, what we're reading. I do have a special report. Do you want it?
Sure, you can go first. Is this about the Brady Bunch?
Yes. Greg came out with a huge announcement this week on the Real Brady Bros.
Okay. Is Greg
for the last 3 years? Barry Williams.
Is he the oldest of the children?
Yeah,
of the boys.
He's 74 now.
Wow.
He's 74.
We're still calling him Greg.
He's 74. Well, Greg and Peter are doing the Real Brady Bros, and they say, and so anyway, we thought it was over because they just did.
I was hoping it was over.
They just did 3 years of sitting down, watching a VCR, and watching the Real Brady Bros. And again, they can't play any of the sound; they're just watching it, and then they're telling you in real time what was happening or what was not happening.
What a concept
at the time!
What a world we live in, where
So,
this is entertainment.
The final episode, and we thought it was the final episode. They bring in Cindy, and they bring in
Jan?
Bobby. No,
Bobby.
No, Jan was not there. Marsh was not there. And then they said, "Hey, stay tuned," because I just found this podcast. It is one of those things you listen to. It is so horrific you cannot stop.
You've listened to all the episodes?
I wonder if it's going to work. I've probably listened to like 10. I've been sending it out to my friends, and they're like, "Why did you send this to me?" And I said, "Listen to it."
It's horrible.
They said it's unlistenable. I said, "Exactly." And then
hold on, real quick. When you eat something that's really bad?
Yeah.
Or drink something? Do you want other people? Do you want to verify?
Totally.
Hey, this is the worst thing I've ever eaten.
Yes.
You try it and verify that it's worse.
Exactly.
All right, because I do not have that instinct.
Anyway, big announcement. If you're out there and you're following the Real Brady Bros like I am, Greg came on this week. It's kind of a teaser. It was just 90 seconds.
I don't think anyone's
He
following.
said, "Hey, just want to let you know, it's not over. Jan is coming in. Marsha is coming in. This time what they're going to do
Was
is
it over when the Germans bombed
They're going to
Pearl Harbor?
start from the last episode with Jan and Marsha. And I think now with Greg, Peter,
They're going to roll
everyone's
it back?
there. They're going all the way back.
Wow.
The Real Brady. So they're going to start. They've already gone from the beginning to the end. Now we're going all the way. And I'm gonna take that ride. I am going to
All four of them?
Yeah. And then I made a fatal mistake last week. I started following this girl called the Salty Dancer, and what she does, she's in her 60s, and what she does is she finds
Is this on YouTube?
it's everywhere. You haven't heard of the Salty Dancer?
No. And hopefully I never will.
So anyway, she's down in Florida somewhere, and boy can she dance! And she dances out in the salt water.
What
the
style
sand,
of dancing?
Any style. So what she does is she'll take a really famous dance, and you'll see the famous dance, and it's usually by choreographed like
Fred Astaire.
30 or 40 years ago.
Okay.
And now she's 60, and she's doing the
So
dance.
like hip hop dancing.
Yeah. So
Janet
I started
Jackson.
following her, and like, wow. For 60, even if she can really dance. Now what it's done, though, is every woman out there that is like 60 and above that does these dancing videos, they're all following me around. And
You're in the algorithm, bro.
I cannot get enough of it. There is this nurse, and she is probably... I found the nurse from watching Salty Dancer. This nurse is probably... She's wearing the same clothes Salty Dancer is, and Salty Dancer is very fit. This nurse is not fit. Every day, though, before she puts on her nurse outfit, she does a dance in her bedroom. And you can't believe that she's on YouTube getting all these hits and people are following it, because it's a little horrific. It is not,
here you are.
It's not what I'm seeing. I can't get enough of it. I cannot. Well, I just... Every day I wake up, I see the salty dancer, I see her. Now I have like these 10 other older women follow me around. I'm seeing all their dancing, and for whatever reason, I'm watching it makes me very happy.
Does it make you want to dance?
It does.
Are we going to get Dandy Don's dancing videos from here on out?
Maybe. Yeah, and I don't know what it is, and it's probably because my eyes are failing. Or as you get older, like I don't find younger women attractive. Like women my own age, I don't find attractive either. Like 10 years, 7 years younger, but for whatever reason, Salty Dancer 60, I kind of like her a little bit. And then the nurse with the 40 extra pounds, I'm kind of like, there's something sexy about this wiggle and jiggle. And then she puts on, is it a stethoscope?
Sure.
Yeah, she puts on her outfit, and then you'll see her doing nurse stuff at work.
I hope that.
And then guys that are in there that have just had heart attacks, they know her and they've seen her dancing, and then she kind of talks to the patients a little bit. I haven't seen her dance from one of them yet in the hospital, but I'm waiting.
I wonder if you could just get something like that with real estate.
The dancing, yeah.
Anyway, so what do you got? What are you watching? What are you listening to? And what do you read?
Wow, neither of them compare in stature to the dancing nurse.
I won't be mad if you want to start watching the real Brady Burrows. It takes a minute to catch on, but once you catch it, you've caught it.
Wow.
What?
I think I might do. I have something, but it was like a serious thing.
You can be serious.
But
you don't
like
think I'm serious about the Salty Dancer and the real Brady Bros?
I think that you are.
I'm totally serious.
But like it's a totally different category.
There's nothing wrong. That's why you're you and I'm me and we're different, and that's why we're the Ron and Don show. It's been working for decades. So
what
do you?
Well, the thing and maybe you can explain this to me because I actually honestly don't know how it happened. I like me some Malcolm Gladwell. And he has this,
speaks to it, which is weird to me because you're very intelligent, and he has even said this, that he tries to take concepts and break those concepts down to a level that an 8th grader can understand.
Right. So I guess I'm in 8th grade.
I guess you are.
So he does this show.
I see you more as an 11th grader.
He does a show called Revisionist History.
Yep.
And it's a podcast, and he's also on YouTube as he's following in our footsteps. And so I listen. I've gone through that show a bunch. Mm-hmm. And then for whatever reason, it stopped showing up in my podcast feed.
Because
so
they sold it.
Pushkin sold it?
It sold it.
So it just disappeared.
Yeah.
And so I figured that he was writing another book, which he was. And I think I read he went back and re-examined the book that made him famous. Like 20 years later.
Tipping Point
or whatever.
Fame.
Tipping Point Revisited.
Yeah.
So I listened. I was like, oh, well, no wonder I'm not seeing his show.
They're all the same book.
Because he's writing a new book.
Yep.
So then somehow it popped up on my YouTube, not in the podcast. There's a whole new season of Revisionist History, and the algorithm's like, oh, Ron's out on Malcolm. Like somehow the algorithm decided I don't like Malcolm Gladwell anymore, which I do. So I've gone back now, and so this is a little bit old news, but the new season it's remarkable, the stuff that he's doing. So
more remarkable than the Salty Dancer?
Possibly, depending on what turns you on. Okay. But so it starts out with a double header on re-examining Derek Chauvin and
the dancers from Dancing with the Stars. Derek. I've seen Derek.
No.
I think his last name is Derek Howe, not Derek Chauvin. No, you're talking about the shooting.
The choking in Minneapolis of Floyd, where he puts his knee on the back of his neck.
You almost said Floyd Landis.
No.
Who is a
George Floyd.
George Floyd.
Floyd
Landis was a cyclist.
He was.
Who won the Tour after Lance, and then he was a tattletale about Lance.
Wasn't Floyd like the superintendent in Three's Company or something like that?
No. Floyd. I'm glad you asked. No. TV Land, the Andy Griffith Show, Floyd the Barber.
Floyd the Barber. And so different Floyd.
Bring it on. What else do you got?
It launched the new season. He's going through. It might have already been done. I'm catching up with it.
The new season is called Floyd the Barber?
It's called Floyd the Barber.
Now I'm interested.
Floyd, we're going to have all the dead people come back to life and watch the thing that made them famous.
I love that, man. I would love to live in Mayberry.
Really?
Eat some of Aunt B's pies?
No, thanks.
You know what? Aunt B and Andy Griffith hated each other. Just wouldn't even talk to each other on
I
set.
love watching Ron Howard talk about his Opie Cunningham days because it's really interesting.
And was there anyone funnier than Don Knotts?
Yes.
I don't think so.
I'm sure there has to be.
Who?
Don Rickles.
Yep.
Benny Hill.
Yep. Tim Conway. Yeah.
The Tim Conway on the Carol Burnett show, funnier.
Very good. And then Harvey Korman is always laughing, though.
Well, I loved it.
Okay, so what was your point about Malcolm Gladwell?
Why does the algorithm, when you've seen every episode or you listen to every episode of a show, all of a sudden just ghost you for an entire season?
Because for a month you started looking at porn.
Wow. Saltydancer.org.
No, I've had that happen with podcasts I like, and then they disappear off the player of your choice, and then you find out that it's been sold. So then you have to go through Spotify or somebody else that bought it, so you can pay a fee. That's happened a number of times. Real Brady Bros, free.
They should pay you to listen
That's
to Real
free
Brady
on the
Bros.
podcast player of choice. And I'm still waiting for Tina Louise at 96, the only living member of GI.
And now you're calling it GI?
Yeah. Tina and I call it GI. Well, she's embarrassed that she was on that show, so she calls it GI. All right, we got to go. Anything?
Go to ronandonsitdown.com if you want us to represent you in a real estate transaction.
Yeah. Anything else?
ron@ronandon.com.
Anything else?
I will not be subscribing to Salty
Were you
Dancer.
going to thank Matt off the mic for... No?
You waited too long. Thanks. And that was it, Jack.
Thanks to Matt, and thanks to Grace for helping this week, and Ron and myself, and Charlie the dog, and my son who's the station voice when he's 7. I don't think he likes me in the station voice anymore.
Probably not.
So we're going to keep playing it for sure.
It's charming.
All right, you guys, if you need us, ronandonsitdown.com. Until next time, you keep your head up and your shoulders back. You've been listening to the Ron and Don Show, only on the Ron and Don Radio Network. Where's your fake smile?
Hey, it's G-Force O'Neill. Thanks for listening to my dad and his boyhood friend, Mr. Ron.